The Autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman, originally published in 1971, is a fictional oral narrative crafted by Ernest J. This compelling novel revolves around the life of Jane Pittman, an African-American woman whose remarkable journey spans from the era of the Civil War to the 1960s civil rights movement. Through Jane's perspective, the book challenges conventional historical accounts by offering unique insights into the past. Despite not being a participant in wars or the creator of laws, Jane's story holds great significance as she displays incredible resilience throughout the tumultuous 100 years of American history. The novel begins with an introduction, where a schoolteacher persistently requests an interview with Miss Jane. Set in 1962 in rural Louisiana, Jane is already 110 years old, accompanied by her protective companion, Mary Hodges. Curious about the purpose behind the teacher's interest, Mary questions why he wants to learn about Miss Jane. In response, the teacher explains that he teaches history and believes that Jane's life experiences can help him effectively teach the subject to his students. When Mary questions the flaws in his history books, the teacher acknowledges that Miss Jane's remarkable story has been overlooked. Eventually, Jane agrees to speak with the teacher, thus setting the stage for the captivating narrative that unfolds. In Book I, titled The War Years, Jane is depicted as a young slave referred to as Ticey by her owner on a Louisiana plantation. As both her parents have passed away, and her birth date remains unknown, she estimates her age to be around 11 when a Union officer visits the plantation towards the end of the Civil War. This officer addresses her as Miss Jane, a name that resonates with her, and she adamantly refuses to respond to her slave name, Ticey, despite enduring severe beatings from her mistress. Following the war's conclusion, Jane joins a group of former slaves embarking on a journey towards the north on foot. Along the way, they encounter a group known as the patrollers, whom Jane describes as poor white trash responsible for capturing runaway slaves on behalf of their masters. In Jane's words, these individuals later formed the notorious Ku Klux Klan. Overall, the Autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman showcases the power of one individual's story to challenge established historical narratives. Jane's personal journey, recounted through her own voice, sheds light on the often neglected perspectives of those who lived through significant historical events. After the tragic incident where the patrollers murder everyone except Jane and a young boy named Ned, Jane persists in her journey towards Ohio, accompanied by Ned. Uncertain of the correct direction to head north, they encounter help from various individuals along the way, but unfortunately, they never manage to cross the border of Louisiana. Consequently, Jane and Ned decide to halt their travels. Book II, titled Reconstruction, unveils Jane's new life as a field laborer on a Louisiana plantation owned by Mr. Bone. Mr. Bone, chosen by Union representatives due to his support for Northern, Republican, political efforts, oversees the plantation. However, as the late 1870s arrive, the federal government's commitment to Reconstruction in the South wanes, leading to the restoration of the plantation to its original owner, Mr. Dye. Jane perseveres in her toil in the fields, but the working conditions gradually deteriorate to a state barely distinguishable from slavery again. Although she receives meager wages, Jane manages to prioritize Ned's education, ensuring he attends school. As the North progressively withdraws its political and financial support from the South, bringing an end to the era of Reconstruction, racist groups consolidate their power. Many former slaves opt to flee the South due to the escalating hostility and racial tensions. However, Jane firmly decides to remain in her homeland, determined to do what she can for herself and Ned. At the age of 17, Ned can no longer endure the oppression inflicted upon the African American community, prompting him to become a community organizer. His endeavors to assist his fellow African Americans in migrating north incite the ire of the local white population. Faced with threats to his life, Ned relocates to Kansas. Meanwhile, Jane develops a relationship with Joe Pittman, another worker on the plantation. They enter into a common-law marriage, agreeing to live together. Overcoming various challenges orchestrated by Mr. Dye, they eventually move to a ranch near the Texas border. For 7 years, Joe thrives in his role, skillfully training wild horses at the ranch. However, Jane begins to experience haunting dreams depicting Joe's demise while attempting to tame a black stallion. A sense of foreboding engulfs Jane as a formidable black stallion arrives at the ranch, triggering her fear. Overwhelmed by her apprehension, she releases the horse, and tragedy strikes when Joe is fatally injured while attempting to recapture it. Meanwhile, Ned, who has married and adopted the surname Douglas in honor of the abolitionist Frederick Douglass, embarks on a path of teaching and becomes involved in the Spanish-American War. In 1899, Ned, accompanied by his family, returns from the war in Cuba and settles near Bayonne, Louisiana, where Jane has established her home. Now known as Professor Douglass, Ned aspires to educate black children and propagate the teachings of Frederick Douglass. During a passionate sermon delivered by the river, he urges fellow African Americans to fight for their rights. However, his impassioned rhetoric alarms the white power holders, leading them to hire a Cajun mercenary named Albert Clugo to assassinate Ned. Tragically, Ned succumbs to the fatal gunshot. Following Ned's death, Jane confronts Clugo, who was once her fishing companion, and prophesies a painful demise for him. In Book 3, titled The Plantation, Jane secures employment on Robert Sampson's plantation. The Sampsons have a son named T-Bob, but Robert also has an older illegitimate son, Timmy, who is considered black in the racially segregated society. T-Bob and Timmy share a deep brotherly bond, which Robert reluctantly allows as long as Timmy demonstrates subservience and respect towards his white brother. However, their relationship takes a tragic turn when the racist white overseer, Tom Joe, falsely accuses Timmy of wrongdoing. Timmy's defense against the false accusations is misconstrued as insolence, resulting in his banishment from the plantation. Moving forward to the 1930s, T-Bob experiences love for Mary Agnes LaFarber, the schoolteacher at the plantation. Although Mary is of Creole heritage, her fair complexion allows her to pass as white. Eventually, T-Bob proposes marriage to her, but she refuses, citing society's disapproval of their racially mixed union. Devastated by the rejection, T-Bob tragically takes his own life. When Robert blames Mary for his son's death, his friend Jules Reynard redirects the blame to the deep-seated racist beliefs that perpetuated such tragedies. Book 4, titled The Quarters, unfolds with Jane and a group of women residing in the quarters of Sampson's plantation, collectively nurturing a young orphan named Jimmy Aaron. Over time, a belief emerges among them that Jimmy is the chosen one, destined to liberate them from the clutches of oppression. As Jimmy grows up, he embraces his role as a civil rights activist. After completing his education in New Orleans, he returns to Bayonne in the early 1960s to orchestrate the arrest of a mixed-race girl for daring to drink from a white fountain. Subsequently, he organizes a protest against the unjust arrest. Jane, now over 100 years old, remains resolute in her determination to participate in the protest. As she prepares to join the march against injustice, Robert Sampson, the plantation owner, appears and delivers the devastating news of Jimmy's untimely death. Unfazed by the heart-wrenching news, Jane fearlessly leads her community past Sampson and proceeds with their march against inequality. The autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman draws inspiration from the stories shared by Ernest J. Gaines's aunt. While crafting the novel, Gaines found guidance and inspiration in Lay My Burden Down, a compilation of interviews conducted with former slaves during the 1930s. The powerful narrative of Miss Jane Pittman was later adapted into a made-for-TV movie. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did and be sure to subscribe. Thank you.